Hey everybody, it's Tim Tialdo. Every year, thousands of women retire from the pageant world and begin their professional journey. But most of them try to make the transition without a solid plan. And then they're left with the post-pageant feeling of frustration, depression, and wondering, well, what do I do now? But it doesn't have to be that way. That's why I created the Life After the Crown Starter Guide. It's filled with 7 essential principles to help you make a successful transition to the real world. Everything from figuring out your why and creating a well-thought-out vision to really figuring out what will be the best path for you personally. There's no need to struggle anymore with not having a path or direction. Let me help you through it. To grab your absolutely free copy of the Life After the Crown Starter Guide, just go to timtialdo.com/starter guide, type in your email, and I'll send it to you right away. Don't put it off. Now is the time to start preparing for life after pageants, and this guide is a logical first step. So what are you waiting for? Go to my site and grab it free right now. Enjoy today's podcast, everybody.
Hey, it's Miss America 2013, Mallory Hagan, and you're listening to Life After the Crown with Tim Tialdo.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Life After the Crown podcast, where each episode I bring you useful interviews with former pageant contestants, title holders, and women of influence who are now succeeding across many different industries in the real world. My name is Tim Tialdo, lifestyle entrepreneur, pageant host, author, and quite honestly, somebody who just wants to help you become a better person overall. Now, if pageant life is over for you, or it soon could be, and you're wondering, well, what do I do now? Or what's next? This podcast is designed to help make the transition to real life and the school of hard knocks a little bit easier for you to handle. So if this is your first time listening, thanks for tuning in. We're glad you're with us today. Let's get started. Not only welcoming a former Miss America to the show today, but a woman who has recently announced her intent to run in the 2018 congressional election in Alabama's 3rd Congressional District. After she won Miss America in 2013, the organization gave her the platform to travel the world and use her voice to reach hundreds of thousands with a message of hope and awareness regarding issues of personal significance to her, ranging from abuse to equality to civil rights. Both during and after her tenure with the Miss America organization, she successfully lobbied Capitol Hill for the funding of child advocacy centers across the country. In 2016, she joined the news team at WLTZ, an NBC affiliate in Columbus, Georgia, where she has covered community events, sports, breaking news, and elections over the last 18 months. But in 2017, she found herself at the center of a controversy within the Miss America organization that ultimately led to her truly understanding the power of her own voice. Excited to welcome Mallory Hagan to the podcast today. Mallory, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, hey, let's just get right into that and talk a little bit about it because I know that you've dealt with it plenty and probably it was something that was unexpected. But, you know, what I could tell is that it not only caught you off guard, but it kind of caught the whole entire pageant world off guard. So how did you learn about it and what was your first reaction?
Well, it's interesting. I knew that this type of behavior was going on within the Miss America organization and specifically targeting me, but I just didn't have any way to prove it. As you may know, and as many people who have experienced some sort of, systematic harassment or experienced being ostracized by something, a lot of it's done word of mouth. And within the Miss America organization, I do think that a lot of people knew what was going on or knew that something wasn't right. I'm just not sure that they knew exactly what they were supposed to do about it. And so this gave everyone a chance, because it was there in black and white and in writing and in the news, to really step up and say, hey, this isn't right. This has been going on for some time, but no one really knew how to combat it. And so it was really great for everyone in the Miss America organization who especially knew me personally, to know that I wasn't lying about what was happening behind closed doors and sort of to me and other people. And it was really amazing to see the Miss America organization and specifically the former Miss Americas come together and demand change and then be a part of actively working to create a better organization. So I'm really proud of the young women and the other former Miss Americas who stepped forward and sort of demanded that this not be the way that things were for a women's empowerment organization. And, I'm really excited. I think they were working on some really awesome stuff for the fall of this year for Miss America. And I look forward to seeing what this new board of directors and with Gretchen's leadership, what they're gonna pull together.
Well, I think what's really interesting, I talked to a few of your friends and I've obviously read a lot about you, is it sounds like it created a little bit of a paradigm shift in your entire life. So let's talk about you before this all happened and kind of what you were doing professionally and how it's led to what you're doing now.
Sure. So during my time as Miss America, my goal was to complete the cosmetic and fragrance marketing program. It's a 4-year degree from the Fashion Institute of Technology. And it's actually a really difficult program to get into. They only take about 35 to 40 students every year. And so that was my goal. I wanted to be a global marketing director for a cosmetic brand. And during my time as Miss America, and specifically one morning when I was on Good Morning America, there is a producer who I still talk to, actually. Her name is Darcy Bonfie. She came up to me after I was on and she said, absolutely not. I don't know what you're doing with your life, but you should be on television. That is 100% your path. And so, of course, during that year as Miss America and during any time that you're a title holder, people tell you things about yourself that you may not have really realized were there. And so I started to explore that during my time as Miss America. And ultimately, with the help of Sam Haskell, I got an agent at William Morris out in Los Angeles. And so I was pretty convinced that that's what I was going to do. I was going to go out there and work my tail off and ultimately end up on some sort of national stage, if you will, in television. And much of the things that came to light with the Miss America organization story in this past December started right then and there. And so there was a lot of sort of meddling in my career and with the opportunities that were coming my way and some behind the scenes things that were going on, keeping me from being hired. And so ultimately I decided that, you know what, I'll just go back to school. I'll finish that degree and I'll move about my life being a global marketing director. That's what I wanted to do anyway. And that's something that, frankly, he had no control over. And so I went back to New York, finished up my degree at FIT in advertising, marketing, and communications. And I started a business with my business partner. And she's also a former Miss New York. Her name is Claire Buffy. Mm-hmm. We started a business called Define, Mind, Mission, and Marketing. And we took both of our marketing backgrounds and started helping young women in the Miss America organization and other young professionals develop their resume and interview skills, media training, speech writing, et cetera. So, throughout that time living in New York, back in New York, I was still in some way or another pursuing the concept of television and ultimately decided that that's what I wanted to do. And if I couldn't do it in the avenue that I had before, then I would go back home where people knew that I had a work ethic and it would speak for itself. And so I asked for a job in Columbus, Georgia, and started out at the very bottom of the barrel. Yeah. I took a job paying relatively zero money and got up at 1:30 every morning to drive across state lines to be at work by 4 a.m. Eastern time. And I did the morning news for the first 6 months I was there. And then they promoted me to evening anchor. So it's been a little bit of a journey over the last 5 years. And there have certainly been moments where I sort of said, why is all of this happening to me? And now that I'm running for office, I know exactly why.
So Let's take a step back, if you will. And I talk to both Miss USA's and Miss America's about this. And I always find it fascinating that really the kind of the first move that they all tend to make is let's go to L.A. What was the perception for you when you won the crown of, what the title would hold and what it would mean for your future?
The perception for me was that it was a great way to earn money, save money, because Miss America is paid as a contracted worker. And then the perception was that the rest of my school would be paid for, which is initially why I got back into the Miss America organization living in New York. I had done Miss America as a teen, or the Miss America's Outstanding Teen program. And then I wanted to go to school at FIT. I was in state, so I just needed a little bit of tuition money. And so that's why I got back into it. So ultimately, when I won, I was like, great, now the rest of my school is paid for. When I'm done with this year, I'll go back to New York. I had a very serious boyfriend at the time. So I just figured this is 1 year that will help, propel the rest of my future. And I knew going into Miss America that it didn't have the same clout as previous years. The Miss Americas who were lucky enough to win the title and do the job back in the 50s and 60s, even 70s, there was quite a different perception of, quote, Miss America. It was the first reality show. The prize package was crazy. They were in commercials all the time. And I knew that's not what the life of Miss America was going to be for me in this day and age. But I did know that it was a great opportunity for monetary gain. And that's really all I expected to get out of it.
Well, and when it comes to the Miss America organization and, some of the changes that you were mentioning earlier that, Gretchen is talking about making, I mean, you're somebody who faced kind of the backlash from the powers that be. We'll just talk about Sam here, about your weight and your on-stage look. Are you interested, like Gretchen is, in maybe even getting rid of the swimsuit category for Miss America?
I have to be really honest. I'm sort of neither here nor there. The swimsuit portion of the competition was a great mental struggle for me. And many women say it made them feel empowered. To me, it was a hurdle that I had to get over in order to do the job that I wanted to do. And that's how I looked at it. So I've never been a person who's like, we should get rid of swimsuit. It's stupid. I see its point, and there is great benefit in teaching young women across the country how to understand nutrition, understand their bodies, and live a healthier lifestyle. And ultimately, I did understand those things. But I did feel a certain amount of pressure to, maintain that weight that I won Miss America. And frankly, it was one that I was pretty short-sighted with. I was looking at the swimsuit portion of competition as, like I said, something I had to do, and therefore something that was a short-term goal. And so when I did win, it was quite a realization to figure out that I sort of had to maintain that for the year.
Sure.
Because I was, for lack of better, I was doing 3-a-days. I would get up in the morning and go to the gym, and then I would go to yoga, and then I would also practice my talent. So that was 3 separate times during the day leading up to Miss America that I was doing something physically active. And of course, my diet was very strict and regimented. So to be on the road and realizing like, oh my gosh, I just don't feel that there's any way I can maintain what I look like. That was hard. And it continues to be a struggle because I think that there's a perception of what I should still look like, or that I should still maintain that type of physique, if you will. But I think a lot of women go through that with the swimsuit portion of competition. So that would be why I'm sort of like, that's not really necessary. But a lot of people gain things from it too. And it does offer an opportunity to learn about your body and nutrition, like I said, and live a healthier lifestyle. So I see both sides of the equation. And I see why some people feel that the swimsuit portion is outdated or it's unnecessary. But I'll let Gretchen and the board of directors and the people who are working on rebranding Miss America make that decision for what the future of the program looks like.
Sure. Well, let's get into your life after the crown. And I know you talked a little bit about, it earlier and kind of your journey over the last 4 years up to this point. Let's specifically get into Define, the business that you started with your partner. And I believe you've kind of consulted with over 200 clients in 47 states. And for the girls who are thinking about getting into something post-pageants in which they can use what they learned in the pageant world as quote unquote a business, what advice would you give to them as to how you and her built that business?
Well, I think the advice that I would give them if they wanted to be a part of working with other young women is to remember that the experience is about the person sitting in front of you. The young woman who's competing, she needs to bring out the best in her and do what works best for her and express herself in a way that is uniquely hers. And so that was one thing I was really proud of with myself and Claire as we worked together. It was always about bringing out the most unique traits in our client. And it wasn't about what worked for either one of us, because that's not what works for everyone. And it wasn't about telling them who to be or what to say so much as it was helping them figure out exactly what they believed in and how to express it. And so my advice would be that, just always remember that if you were trying to help a young woman on this journey, that it's about that young woman and nothing else.
So do you like the entrepreneurial journey, or do you like working for someone else better?
I much prefer to work for myself. and honestly, I don't mind working for other people. I think it's the freedom of working for yourself and your schedule that I love. I am someone who's very spontaneous, and I sort of fly by the seat of my pants and love to travel. And so when you're employed and you have a strict schedule, all of that sort of becomes a little less doable. And so I love working for myself, and that's why I love being on the campaign trail too, because it's sort of every day is different, and I like that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that here in a few minutes because that's very exciting. Now, as a former Miss America, a lot of the girls have this belief that if you get to the national show, you win the crown, that pretty much that's the ticket to a better life. So talk about what that meant for you, and also what has been the most challenging parts of post-pageant life for you.
I do think that being Miss America is certainly a conversation starter. I do not think that it holds the clout or the weight that it should, because people don't understand what it means to compete in Miss America. They don't understand the job of Miss America, and they have certainly no idea what Miss America does on a daily basis. So a lot of that is the fault of what once was a board of directors and people working in the executive offices not doing a great job of marketing Miss America and marketing what it truly is. So the perception is a little bit off. So I do think that it's a great way to get your foot in the door when you want a job or you want an opportunity. People will certainly listen, and I'm always grateful for that. But you still have to prove yourself, and you still have to prove that you deserve to be there, and you still have to prove that you have a work ethic. That's certainly a challenge. And I think that you could ask any Miss America. It's not all rainbows and roses. There's a little bit of a psychological roller coaster that goes on when it's all over. Many of us Miss Americas are very type A, very goal driven. I wouldn't say we're necessarily competitive, but there's an aspect of wanting to always elevate yourself, wanting to always do and be more. And so when you've reached the pinnacle of this goal that you've had for some time, then you start to go, well, am I ever going to do anything that's better than this, greater than this? Will I ever be more than this? Will anyone ever see me as more than this? And so that's a little bit of a psychological thing to address and certainly work around. And I can't speak for anyone else's experience post Miss America, but mine was very much clouded by the controversy that you read about and heard about. And so the worst part for me of being Miss America was that the last 4 years of my life have been clouded by someone actively working against me and my career and my business and something that I cared about. I mean, essentially the entire goal was to make me not welcome in the Miss America organization. And as someone who was a part of the Miss America organization for 3 generations, my grandmother was a longtime volunteer, a choreographer for Miss Tennessee. My mother has been a choreographer and been involved for years. And so, it felt like someone had taken a piece of me away. So the last 4 years were very difficult. And, now it's really nice to be able to pick up the phone and call Gretchen Carlson and know that I'm welcome in this organization that I worked really hard to represent. And I continue to work really hard to represent. The last 4 years were hard in that aspect. But now, I'm really happy about the direction that we're going. And I'm optimistic too.
Well, you bring up a topic that I think you can teach a lot of people from a very unique perspective. When you win the crown, you become, quote unquote, semi-famous or a public figure, whatever you want to call it. But along with that also comes scrutiny. Now, scrutiny to the level that you've dealt with is usually not normal, but what would be some advice that you would give to people who, have to deal with online haters or, scrutiny or somebody attacking you when you're in a position like that?
Oh, well, listen, none of us are perfect. I certainly have not handled every scenario with grace and class the way that I would like to. And sometimes my Spitfire personality and my, just my personality in general, sometimes they'll get the best of me. But one thing I have learned is that it's a lot easier to sit on the other side of a screen and tell someone who they should be and what they should wear and what they should say than it is to actually do and be and wear and say those things. And so the greatest lesson I've learned is that you're never going to please everyone. And some of that might come from having been Miss America. So I think some of that might come with age. But you're never going to please everyone. You're never going to say or wear or do or whatever, anything that's going to make everybody happy. And if you do, then you're not doing something right. I think that it's incredibly important when you have a platform, whether it's a local title or all the way up to Miss America, to use that platform to better your community and better the world around you. And that's just simply not going to please everyone. They're going to have something to say about it. And so if you can remember that, I think it'll make the process of being scrutinized or being, quote, hated on a little easier. Like if somebody's hating on you, then somebody is paying attention. So you're at least turning heads, if you will.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've talked to a lot of title holders across a lot of states, and I know a lot of them were empowered by the way that you handled it, even if it is a Spitfire personality, which a lot of us do have. One of them was even telling me, there was a video where you were basically saying, "I'm the storm and I'm coming." And, I think there's something to be said about, having that fire inside your belly, so to speak, to go out and fight a little bit. So talk about that.
Yeah. It's interesting. When I was in second grade, I got in my first real big fight. I don't think anyone is surprised to hear that I've been in a physical altercation. I say that and people are like, yeah.
Hmm.
No, so I got in my first fight, and it's because this boy, I wanted to play football with the boys, and he came up and he hit me across the face with a ball in his hand, and I just beat the tar out of him.
That a
And
girl.
I was terrified. I mean, I was terrified that my mother was going to just kill me. Like, I just, when you're a kid and you're like waiting for your mom to come home, and
Sick to your
you're in
stomach.
trouble. Yeah. I mean, that's where I was. And she actually was the opposite. I mean, she very much looked at me and just said, "Don't apologize for standing up for yourself." And that was that. That I think that really showed me as a kid that my voice mattered and that I could stand up for myself and that it was okay. And I didn't always do it the right way. And I probably still don't always do it the right way. But I think that the empowerment comes from parents and from community members and people around you hearing you and listening to you and telling you that what you have to say is valid. And I think we need to do more of that for our young people. I can't tell you how many times kids are saying, like, stop tattling. And it's like, well, maybe they're telling you something that you need to hear and you need to listen because it could be a much deeper issue or it could be a much larger problem. And this is the first time they're trying to express it. So I think that was a lot of it. My parents always listened, and that's empowering to a young person. And that carries through to the rest of their life. And I'm really grateful for that. But I do think that that's a lot of where that ability to sort of say, no, that's not how this is going to be comes from.
Well, I'll tell you what, what's exciting is you're now taking that personality, and what's exciting is, not too long from now, you have a primary. You're running for office. You're going for Congress, which, you go back a year and a half. Was that even on your mind?
Not even the slightest bit. I will tell you that I did feel very strongly that working in the news, if I had a successful career, it would be a great segue into being a public servant from the perspective of an elected office. So it was on my radar as something I would do in the far distant future. But a group of people where I live approached me and asked me if I would consider running. And initially I said no. And then, I started looking at the numbers of Congress, and we've got 4 women under the age of 40 currently in Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And just the movement that we're in as a country where women are finally, I think, or maybe not finally, it's just a resurgence of women understanding their voices and saying, no, like we have a place here in society and we would like to be a part of the decision-making process. There are, 400, I think, women running across the country right now.
That's correct.
Yeah. And, so the more I started looking at it, the more I was like, well, this is something that I care deeply about. I care deeply about people. And I am sort of terrified for the leadership that our young people are seeing in this moment. And so maybe I won't win, maybe I will. Either way, I hope that I inspire other young people to look into their local elections, whether it's city or state house or whatever it may be, and get involved because I think that we're in a critical place in society and we need it.
So what was the real trigger for you? I mean, was there a certain moment where you were like, that's it, we're doing this?
Actually, I don't think I've told anyone this. So actually, after all the stuff with Miss America happened, I took quite a few meetings out in Los Angeles. And I still have a manager out there, and I haven't like hung up my dreams on any sort of television career maybe in the future after public service. But yeah, I went out there and I had all these meetings, and you know how this works. You go on a meeting, you have no idea if there's any real reason for you to be there, or
Yep.
like why they took a meeting in the first place. But I had quite a few lined up over the course of a couple of days over a weekend. And that weekend was planned before the concept of Congress came to be. And so I said, well, let me just go and take these meetings. And I sort of gave myself a personal deadline. I said, if no one calls and no one says, we would like to hire you or we're interested in you or whatever from Los Angeles by this day, like I gave it a date, then I said that is a very clear sign from God that I'm supposed to run. And no one called. And so I stuck by what I had said. Like, if no one calls, then I'm going to do it. And no one called. So I said, must be as clear a sign as I can get. There wasn't even like well, maybe. So I'm really big on that. Like I asked for clarification from God and he gave it to me. So here I am.
So I imagine you've got a couple of paths in your mind of how this could go. You either win and get into Congress and you serve your time, or you don't, and maybe you become a political correspondent?
I mean, I guess that could be a possibility, but the more I've been in the trenches now and meeting people and hearing their stories and just seeing there's so much of our system that's broken, and it's all interconnected, whether it's healthcare or education. It's just, there's so much of it. But the thing that I think is most broken is our awareness of other people and how diversity and inclusion benefits our society. And so I've actually, the plan is to win. I'm not going to lie, and
Good.
I won't do anything but work hard until that day comes. But should I not win, I think I would like to work with an organization or a group, whether it's nonprofit sector or lobbying, for our communities from a perspective of race relations or our criminal justice system. To me, that's one of the biggest problems that our country is facing, is just the us versus them, and not really understanding how we should all be working together to elevate each other so that our society can be better as a whole. And I don't think that a whole lot of things are going to be fixed in the realm of education or healthcare or jobs or any of that until we fix this real problem that we have culturally with racism. And so I don't know if that's because I'm currently entrenched in the South, but I do think that it's a problem that we have across the country. And I would like to post this experience, should I not win, be a part of hopefully changing that.
Well, I think what's interesting is that this is one of the hardest times politically to get involved. I mean, the temperature's hot. The division, as you've mentioned, is incredible. And the courage to jump in, whether male or female, takes a lot right now to be able to do that. So do you have any fears about going in? Obviously, you want to win and you have a fire, but is there anything you're scared about by doing this?
I don't feel scared. I feel optimistic. But, it's what if I don't win? Then what's next? I think that's the greatest fear that I have. I quit my job in order to try my best to serve my community and my district and the country from a different perspective than I have already. And if I'm not given the opportunity to do that, then there's sort of like well, what will I do then? But courage has been a through line of my life. I mean, the phrase "be courageous" is literally tattooed on my body. And so everything that I've ever done has required a bit of a risk. I mean, I picked up and moved to New York at 19. I had no money, no job, no place to live, no nothing. And I made it. And then, being Miss America takes a lot of courage and a lot of discipline. And then I had the courage to move out to LA, courage to move back home. It's been a through line. So I'm hoping that even if I don't win, that this experience teaches me something different that I carry on to whatever it is that happens next.
Well, in addition to that, I read you're taking the tough road financially. You're not accepting PAC money for your campaigns. To talk about how you're going about raising money for your office.
Well, I think that campaign finance is absolutely absurd. I mean, it is beyond something that I even think I ever comprehended until I was sitting on the phone for 8 hours a day calling people, asking them for money. And, congressional races at my level, say I make it through this primary, by the end of this race, I will have spent probably at minimum $2 million, maximum or maybe around $7 million. And if you multiply that by the 6 other congressional districts that are happening in the state of Alabama, that's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Multiply that by the fact that this is happening all over the country. And so I am a proponent of campaign finance reform. I think there should be a cap on the amount of money that campaigns can spend, depending on the office that you're seeking. But that being said, I really wanted this to be a grassroots effort. And so we're taking donations, small and large, from people in our district, from people across the state. And very luckily, I have the opportunity to raise money from people all across the country who are more interested in seeing someone that's a leader be in office than they are worried about party politics. And I just don't think that corporate PAC money is the way to achieve what we want as a nation. Corporations aren't people. So I vowed to not do that.
Well, and I can imagine as a Democrat running in Alabama, you've probably been reached out to by the PACs, yes?
I have been reached out to by PACs like In Citizens United. I mean, they are technically a PAC, but they're not a corporate PAC. They're a PAC that's paid into by people who also want to see Citizens United overturned. And so I have accepted money from unions and from PACs that are interest PACs. But even that amount of money, to be quite honest, is still limited. I mean, there's a limit on the amount of money that they can give a campaign, but they're not corporations. In Citizens United is an organization that people give their money to, and then In Citizens United vets candidates on their behalf, kind of thing. So I think that that's a little bit different. And it's been a really interesting thing to learn about, to be quite honest. The past 2 months have been a learning curve that I never experienced.
I can only imagine.
I never expected to experience is what I should have said. But yeah, it's been crazy.
Well, I was reading a little bit on your website last night, and for those of you listening, it's haganforhouse.com if you want to check it out. Now, I went under your page called Vision, and the first paragraph says, "There is nothing I am more passionate about than standing up for Alabama's children." So tell me where that comes from for you.
Well, I think that as someone who many of the women in my family were sexually abused as children, and just seeing how that still to this day impacts all of our lives, and what resources were there for them and not there for them as children, and how that changed the course of who they are. And so my work has been in child advocacy. It's been fighting for the rights of kids and for our children to be knowledgeable about child abuse and child sexual abuse, and our child advocacy centers to have a shot at being a resource for families. Alabama has more child advocacy centers per capita than any other state. And so that's where it comes from, is listening to my mom tell me the story of, when she tried to tell someone what was going on in her life and she wasn't heard. So our kids are our greatest asset. They're our only chance for a better future. And we need more leaders thinking about them and thinking about the world that we're creating for them as they make decisions that impact our country. And so that's where that comes from for me.
Well, I meet a lot of pageant girls, and a matter of fact, I host the Alabama USA pageant down there, and there are a lot of girls that they want to be, and I'm just thinking of some bios that I read on stage: Attorney General, Secretary of State, Congressman, Senator. Things very much along the lines of what you're exactly doing right now. Now, for many of them, they go to a university or a college, and they might take some political science courses and learn a lot from a professor. But you're in the trenches. You're in the real life experience right now. So, what kind of advice could you give them about wanting to get into this scenario that you're in right now?
I think the advice that I give them, and it's advice I have to actually give myself every single day in this process, is do what feels true to you. I've surrounded myself with a really great team of people and knowledgeable consultants from Washington, D.C. and Alabama. And at the end of the day, this is my campaign. It's my race. And it sure would stink to not win and know that I didn't do what I wanted to do in order to make that happen. And so, my advice is to always challenge the status quo. Just because something's been done a certain way for a certain amount of time doesn't mean that's how it always has to be. And frankly, that's not been working for us anyway. So try something new. For instance, I've been told that visiting with colleges and universities in my district, there are 6. Visiting with those colleges and universities won't turn out the vote. It hasn't worked in the past and it won't work now. Well, a part of the reason I got involved in politics was to engage young people and to inspire young people to get involved in their communities and the world around them and the political process. So it wouldn't be holding true to what I said it is that I wanted to do if I don't engage our colleges and universities. And so I have respectfully disagreed with my entire team on that. And even if it ends up not turning out or not bringing the vote to the polls, I still did what I set out to do. And so I encourage you to stand true to what it is that you want to do, and to keep those goals in sight, and not forget that that's what you set out to do in the first place.
Now, anybody that's paid attention to political media in the last year knows that Alabama has been the center of controversy in terms of politics with what went on not too long ago. Do you feel like the climate down there is changing in addition to you running?
I actually do. Democrats across the state of Alabama worked very hard on behalf of Doug Jones. And of course, as we all know, it was still a very close race. And Senator Jones spent, I think, 7-1, and I could be wrong, but I think that's what it was, over Roy Moore. And so, that was a product of the people getting out and working hard on his behalf. And because of that, those same people are energized in a way that we haven't seen in Alabama in a really long time. And so the Democratic Party is in the process of rebuilding here in the state. And I think people are very excited about the prospect of being able to flip a seat, maybe 2, in this state again. And, they're passionate about it. And so it's really wonderful to see so many faces and so much energy in the process. And I do think that people are hopeful and optimistic for this fall, because I've been told that my race in District 3 is the most winnable race in this state. And so we're working hard to prove that that's what's going to happen.
All right. So exciting time for you. I know that your races are coming up here soon. So tell us about the dates of the primary, and then later in the year, and exactly what we should be paying attention to.
Yeah. So I'm super thrilled. The primary is coming up. It is on June 5th in Alabama. So if you know somebody in Alabama and you know that they can vote, then tell them to get out. It doesn't matter if they're in my district or not. The point here is to make sure that people are voting in the primary, and then the general election's in November. So I want to make sure that everyone's registered to vote, getting out the vote, and making sure that they're exercising their right. That's so important here in our country. I mean, your voice matters, and what we have seen in the past couple of elections that are special elections and whatnot is that it can come down to just a few people. So don't think that your voice doesn't matter. So June 5th and then Tuesday, November 6th.
Well, hey, Mallory Hagan, thank you so much for the time and the insight into everything that's going on in your life. Really appreciate the time, and I wish you the best of luck on June 5th.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a great day. That is today's episode. Thanks to Mallory Hagan for joining me, and thank you to you for listening to Life After the Crown. Now, if you like what you just heard, we hope you'll share it with your friends. Just tell them to go to lifeafterthecrown.com. And by the way, if you have any questions you'd like answered on one of our future shows, or even a guest that you would love to hear me interview, just email me at tim@timtialdo.com or Instagram message me at timtialdo. Until next time, remember the words of Mark 11:24. You can pray for anything, and if you believe that you've received it, it will be yours. Have an awesome week, everybody.